the Northwest wild. Hunting, fishing is my kind of style. I float the Wainuchi when it gets hot. I'm proud of all the things that I've got. I'm digging in moss bags up in the sand, and after work a cold beer in my hand, picking wild berries off God's land, and drinking my buddy's homemade wine. Living Northwest wild. Hunting, fishing is my kind of style. I float the Wainuchi when it gets hot. I'm proud of all the things that I've got. I'm digging in moss bags up in the sand, and after work a cold beer in my hand, picking wild berries off God's land, and drinking my buddy's homemade wine. In the Northwest wild.
Hey, good evening and welcome to Fish on Northwest. Wayne England sitting here live, finally live, back in studio after a 2-week hiatus being on the road. Partner Tommy Donlan will join us. He's running a little late, but he's going to pop in here in a few minutes. So we got that going on. So welcome back. Welcome back in studio. The couple weeks on the road were rewarding and challenging all at the same time, but we're happy to be back in here in studio tonight, bring you another live show from Olympia here on Fish on Northwest, and I'll be flying solo here for a bit. We have some great guests lined up. Heath, Heikkila with CCA to have a great discussion relative to Columbia River Gillnet Reform rollback and what's going on there from CCA's perspective. And then, of course, we're being joined by our good buddy Loren Culp, running for governor on the Republican ticket. He is asked to come back in studio here. The first time he graced us with his presence was early on in his campaign in December, and we introduced a lot of you folks to Loren Culp, and an avid outdoorsman, hunter, fisher, very passionate about the outdoors and the direction that we're going in this state. It's about time to hear from him once again as he marches towards the primary, which is coming up August 4th. So we'll get him in here a little later on in the show. And then, of course, we're going to kind of close it out. Finally, that we're back in studio, we can bring you our successful outing a few weeks ago, going for deepwater lingcod with our buddy Ben Overmars out of Westport again. Very successful outing and a pretty exciting video to watch. So we put that together as an opportunity for you guys to watch some fantastic fishing. So before we get there, long before we get there, I want to remind everybody that Fish on Northwest is presented by Better Homes and Gardens Pacific Commons Real Estate, located in Puyallup, Washington. And of course, all our good buddies out there at Defiance Marine, where you can get your Arima, Defiance, and/or Allied Series boats manufactured. And they will also take care of you for all your boater needs and maintenance and boat sales, used boats. They have a whole host of things going on. Very good friends of Tommy and I. So you can make sure you look them up online. Go to defiancemarine.com and find what it is you're looking for. Okay, with that, we have a number of things going on throughout the Pacific Northwest and beyond, Puget Sound and the ocean. And to help me find my way through this, Tommy is not joining us via studio this evening. Tommy is still out on the road and actually located. You're probably sitting in your boat, aren't you?
I'm sitting in the captain's chair, my friend. The only place to be.
The only place to be. Tommy is currently in CQ, taking advantage of this salmon opportunity. If you hadn't heard, it's salmon season, and there's a lot of opportunity that has already opened up that we're going to walk our way through, part of which he is partaking in, him and the family. And of course, we have things to look forward to in as little as 2 weeks down the road that I'm pretty excited for. So first off, Tommy, we had areas 1, 2, 3, and 4 open up on the 29th. Basically, Oahu, La Push, Nia Bay, and of course Westport. It started out actually not too bad. We receive reports from all those areas that, and of course, if you peruse the pages of social media, you're going to find a number of pictures and successes in some areas, but some are fishing better than others, wouldn't you say, as far as our ocean fisheries are concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Area 4 and, of course, Area 5 opened yesterday. have definitely taken the cake in terms of the catch rate. You know, as I sit here in CQ, I would say pretty much every boat that went out and spent, I would say 3/4 of a day on the water ended up catching their limit of snook. And it's been absolutely phenomenal. Nia Bay, they had the early opener that opened on the 20th.
Right. And
guys were finding fish, you know, right near shore between Wada and Tatoosh Island, you know, anywhere from just off the rocks to, you know, 200 feet of water. And it's been really consistent. And that inshore bite is not always as consistent as we're seeing it. So I would say that the fishing right now out of Area 4 and 5, definitely phenomenal and something to behold. And then, you know, out of Westport, there's a few fish being caught, a little scratchy. Iwaka's a little bit better.
Yeah.
In Area 3, you know, with La Push closed down, there's really not anybody venturing from CQ into, you know, into Area 3, and really not too many people that are going from Westport into Area 3.
Yeah, good point. One thing to remember about Westport, and this is why you check your regs, folks. Westport, of all those the 4 ocean areas that all open simultaneously, is open only 5 days a week. You cannot fish for salmon on Fridays and Saturdays. It's a 5-day fishery. Now, Tommy, you and I, as well as many others, have realized that these fisheries are open through or into September, you know, but that being said, they're all quota-based fisheries, and depending on the amount of pressure, especially like where you're currently camped out, CQ, and the amount of folks that have showed up there, you expressed the other night that you felt like it was Vegas on New Year's Eve.
Yep.
With the amount of folks there, unable to get moorage, the town is booming. It's great to see so many people out fishing, but we also are subjected to these quotas. In some regards, some of those margins are pretty narrow, and with a lot of pressure, we could see some of these close sooner than later. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but, you know, I don't really have too much hope that this is going to go past the 3rd week in July up here. The fishing is just so good.
Right.
Everybody's in them. I mean, it's a great thing. There's a lot of really good opportunity. And I mean, to tell you the truth, I'm not running more than 2 miles from the dock here in CQ. The fish are close. Now guys are getting them all the way from, like I said, Tatoosh all the way down to Pillar Point, past CQ here. Definitely phenomenal, but just with the way things are going, I just can't. I can't see it going much past the 3rd week. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Yeah. I hope I'm wrong, because, you know, the other thing that we've been watching closely is, you know, the Canadian-U.S. border, right?
Yeah.
In order for us to be able to fish the Canadian waters, not make land in Canada, but just to fish those waters, we have to have that border open. And of course, you know, the other thing is that if you don't already have your non-resident Canadian licenses, you can't get it until they open the border. So that's shut down, and that's something that we like to take advantage of as well. And, you know, if our season does end prematurely due to quota running out, we may not have that option unless that border's open.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, things that people are, perhaps some like you have realized that or considered it, and for some folks it may not even be on their radar. Moving on, I mean, so you're going to be there, you're going to take full advantage of the CQ opportunity, and a lot of folks are pretty happy that those fish are in so close and the fishing seems good. Kind of a mixed bag of wild to hatchery fish. What would your guesstimate be on the mix ratio?
Yeah, I would say, you know, roughly 65% hatchery, 35% wild or unclipped.
Yeah.
Pretty good ratio. You know, the wild fish or the unclipped fish are definitely bigger. Definitely running a lot heftier than the hatchery fish, but you know, the opportunity is here and now. Yeah.
Absolutely, good point. So along with that, some of our additional July 1st openers, Area 11 opened on July 1st, and for a handful of folks, they had actually fished pretty good. Saw some very nice sized fish coming right out of Tacoma there in Area 11. And some additional areas we get to look forward to. You know, 9 and 10 are going to open up on July 16th, that mid-July opener, extending in through to August. Now, Area 10 is open for resident coho, and it started off pretty good. We hit a bit of a lull there while we were on the road to Wyoming. It looks like the last few days, that Area 10 opportunity, along with the fact that you can toss a crab pot out now too. So you can get your crab, you can get out there and get on those resident coho, you know, your 2 to 4 pound fish. Doesn't sound like much, but when those hit the grill, you're glad you went out and got them. And the last couple of days, hey, our buddy Matt Messing this morning, flat out got it done by 8 or 8:30. He had his 3 limits of coho and was heading back to the dock. So last few days, even with these big tide swings we got right now, we got like 11-foot water change on our tide. It doesn't matter. Seems like the coho are really starting to kind of congregate in that mid area there at Area 10, and the fishing's good. Again, the Chinook opportunity will open for their Tommy, Areas 9 and 10 mid-July, of which then they'll be putting a lot of time in up there. And great opportunity to look forward to. So you are CQ for a few more days, home for a few, and then back there next weekend. Is that your plan?
That's the goal. We'll see how it works out. That's definitely the goal.
Okay. All right. For folks that want to head out that way, let's talk about some things to do for success. What are you finding is working? Spoons, hoochies? You running any bait at all? What's the combination?
Yeah, the biomass, I think one of the things that I'm really happy about, as I'm sure most folks are, is the sheer biomass of bait out here is just phenomenal. Awesome. These fish that we caught are just puking up these little, almost like a micro herring, kind of firecracker sized herring, and they're just absolutely stuffed with them. And so we've kind of matched that hatch, and we've gone down to using coho killers with a lot of success. We are running firecracker herring in a helmet, in an anchovy helmet. That's been working really well.
Nice.
The other thing that I've noticed is that we've caught these fish anywhere from 70 feet of water all the way out to 280 feet of water. So they're running a pretty wide swath as they make their way to the Puget Sound.
Yeah.
And, we've also run the Kingfisher spoons, Irish cream, cookies and cream with success. So I think based on what I've seen, what I've heard is they're not being too picky, but err on the side of smaller rather than larger. I will say they're not touching the 6-inch atomic plugs. So that might be a little bit above their pay grade for now, but, not too long ago, there was some larger herring in the area. So
right.
It just kind of depends on the week.
Well, a few of those wild fish that you have successfully landed are decent size, and it just shows you that it's not always, they don't always chase those big baits. Sometimes even those bigger fish want to go after that smaller stuff. So just kind of depends what the school of abundance is that they can swim through with their mouth open. They're not gauging the size. It's just availability. Yeah. So, right?
Elephants eat peanuts. How about that?
On the engineer's scale spectrum. Things to remember, kids. Elephants eat peanuts. So, well said. Yep. All right, buddy. Well, I wish you were in here in studio this evening, but I get it. We'll be back together finally next week after 3 weeks of our diversity of road travel and opportunity out there. Looking forward to getting our lingcod video up later this evening. It's a fantastic representation of how good that fishery can be and how comical my partner in crime can be when he's out there on the ocean in his happy place.
Oh man, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah,
I wonder, do I have to be worried about this? Is this something I have to be concerned about?
No, not at all. There's a second video made for that, but this is the clean version. Yeah, so we're good.
The blooper's reel.
Yeah, exactly. So I got a few more fisheries I'm going to run down here as some of this stuff. I don't know if you had caught it, but hey, we had a tremendous bump in the preseason forecast on this summer Chinook opportunity that's going to hit, basically go stampeding towards the Columbia now. They initial forecast was 38,000. They've increased that to 65,000 fish now.
Awesome.
So that is opening up a tremendous amount of fisheries as it moves up river and the openings and opportunities get longer. A lot of it's going to kick off here July 4th. And move on through lower area, Rocky Point to Tongue Point, you got about a 4 or 5 day window. But as we progress upriver, and we're talking about going past Priest Rapids Dam, then you go from there to Rock Island Dam, then from there to Wells. As we progress up that highway, the openings is sustained from July 4th all the way into October, mid-October. And so each one of those opportunities between dams, folks need to check their regulations. But it wasn't that there wasn't going to be fisheries before, but you've just multiplied the opportunity and the bag limits in some respect on some of our fisheries because we've gone from a 38,000 to a 65,000 increase. I hope that's kind of a an indicator on how some of our Chinook runs are going to perform in other areas. If they've all of a sudden recognized that we have that big of an uptick on what's coming back, maybe they went in conservatively, going into this year based on last year's performance. Who knows? It's always a guessing game when we're forecasting these fish returns, but anytime we can see an upswing to the positive, which gives recreational opportunity even more opportunity, I'm in favor. So pretty excited about that as we're talking about Chinook. So I'll cut you out of here. I'm sure you're either cleaning fish, getting dinner, burping a baby, got something going on. So
always.
Yep. Thanks for taking time and jumping in. Look forward to getting you back in here next week, and looking forward to more pictures that you'll be posting up on FHN.
Yeah, we'll do. I can't believe we got through all of that and we didn't even talk about tuna. What's wrong with that? That's not right.
I was waiting for you to bring that up. You are Tommy Tuna Donlin, and you need to give us an update on that. The Coleman clan got out there on the waters today, and there was a very short video of our buddy Ian sticking a hook in the side of a tuna, bringing it overboard, and they all were screaming like a bunch of women. It was pretty impressive.
Yep, and that's going to last all summer long. Can't wait.
Yeah. I don't know how far out they were to find those first tuna. But I'm pretty sure if we look into it, that information's already out there. So
that's a common question. How far do we have to go to get the tuna? And it's however far we need to go. That's the answer.
Yes, that's how. Yeah, you go as far as you need to go to get the tuna. I got a question here. Inquiry of coho bite been around Depot Bay. I have not heard anything. So pretty sure you haven't either because you've been out on the water. So yeah. Okay, buddy.
Beautiful.
Got a few things to cover here before I kick out for a break, but I'm going to let you go so you can get back to doing what you do. So.
Roger. Sounds good. Tight lines.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Tommy Tuna Donlin couldn't join us in studio here tonight, but he will be back next week, and pretty sure we'll put it together a great show with us getting out there on the water and providing content, as well as we'll get back into the bait lab and produce some type of how-to segment relative to salmon, tuna, or anything else going on. So appreciate his check-in. So we do have that moving target opportunity as we roll up the Columbia River, and there's a lot of folks excited about that. That fishery is going to be phenomenal. We've had a couple years of non-access on some of these summer fisheries relative to Chinook and the lower to mid. I will be over on the east side down from the Deschutes during September, attending fish camp once again. So I'm pretty sure the Chinook fishery over there at that time of year is just going to be absolutely lights out and fantastic. Couple other things to make mention of. We had a shrimp closure of all things. We had this abundance opportunity in shrimping in all different areas, and then it was even so good that they upped your limits for Area 6 outside of or in Area 6, and they went from your standard 80 per person to 120. Apparently, the last couple times out on the water, they had a pretty significant influx of folks. Which stands to reason. There's not a lot of things people are out doing, but fishing, now crabbing where it is permissible, and of course the shrimping opportunities in most areas, folks are taking full advantage. They did a flyover apparently, and sounds like they accounted for upwards of 300 buoys within that area in that zone, which gave them concern to ensure they weren't going to over-harvest. Now, if most folks are exercising their right, 4 pots per boat, no matter how many fishers you have on the vessel, 4 pots per boat, with that on an average, even 70 boats is 280 pots. They said they counted 300 buoys on their flyover. I don't believe they had resources, availability of personnel to have boots on the ground, checking limits or actually interacting with folks coming off the water at the ramps. I talked to a few folks who indicated they didn't see the mass pressure. It seemed like normal conditions in operation to them for the days they were on the water. Shrimping they wouldn't put it as like extremely good. It was pretty good. You had to kind of work for them. The tides were big, so you had a narrow window of about an hour and a half to 2 hours max within that tide swing that you could feel confident your pot would be secure on the ground and would get some shrimp. A handful of folks that gave reports said they struggled. They weren't finding the shrimp. Other folks that have those areas dialed did okay, but again, it wasn't on fire. So I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are in how they hit quota. If we're basing it off of flyover and numbers of buoys in the water, that's kind of a wide guess when we can dial it in with science. But the department is doing their best to give us opportunity. Unfortunately, the Area 6, when it came out to say there's so many shrimp, we're going to bump the limit from 80 to 120, and then they give us that opportunity, and then they basically shut it down a week later. So not sure what the particulars are on that. Just making folks aware, if you think you're still able to go shrimp in Area 6 and you have a bounty of 120 per fisher, that is now closed, officially closed. So that's about it. Wanted to give you guys a few updates. Again, it's salmon season, and a lot of our Puget Sound waters and ocean fisheries are up and going, and more are opening soon. So be aware of that. We have some great opportunity on those resident coho out of Area 10. The crabbing is opening up and going. Saw some great success for folks this morning. The last couple of days since things have opened up, and we have a lot of good things to look forward to. And for you folks that are, Washington, Oregon, and make that trek down to that Columbia River, if the summer Chinook is bumped from 38,000 to 65, I'm hoping it's kind of a precursor to say, man, who knows what's going to go on with this buoy 10 fishery? It's already projected to be pretty good, albeit a short window, very short window of opportunity, starting way late in August. Not real favorable tides, early on, but we get into some pretty decent tides as we roll through that thing in a short opportunity. Who knows? Maybe we get an abundance of Chinook showing up and we get an extension, doubtful. But this early indication on these summer Chinook, nonetheless, always take our good news for what it's worth, and given the opportunity all the way up the river for those folks that fish higher than just focusing on buoy 10, to me, that's a success. So. All right, that's enough for the updates of what's going on around. We have a lot of information to cover this evening. We're going to jump out for a quick break. We come back, I'm going to introduce you to Heath Heikkila with CCA. He is the Pacific Northwest Fisheries Director. Pretty much has a good understanding on CCA's position of what's going on at the Commission and the conversations that are happening. That's going to take our 7-year program that's been in play, our 7-year process of Columbia River Gillnet Reform in the main stem, and where it's heading now, 7 years into this, recovery plan and efforts for conservation, and how we find balance between commercial recreational use, and just all the particulars that surround this thing. Why now it's heading off in this other direction? We need some clarification, and CCA has their perspective as to what's going on. We're going to hear about that. We come back after this break with Heath Heikkila right here on FHN.
Defiance Marine is the one-stop shop for the Pacific Northwest angler. Whether you are looking for a small skiff to fish the Sound or rivers, or a huge offshore tuna machine, Defiance Marine has it. At Defiance Marine, be sure to power your boat with a Honda outboard package. Take advantage of the reliability and 5-year top-to-prop warranty on your Honda outboards. Our service department is always here to help and serve you as the customer. Did you know Defiance Marine has boat financing experts to help get you the best term rates on your new boat purchase? If you need financing for that new boat, call us today. We guarantee the best price, best service on a repower for your current boat. Defiance Marine is a Honda Premier dealership and one of the largest on the West Coast. Defiance Marine also carries all the gear that you will need. Everything from auxiliary kicker motors to fishing tackle and bait. Defiance Marine has certified technicians that are top-notch at their job. Some of the best in the Pacific Northwest at evaluating your boat issues and problems. Stop in today or give us a call for all your needs at Defiance Marine.
It's easier than ever to browse homes and connect with an agent on the go with Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate's mobile app. With the app, your home search is synced across all of your devices, so you can pick up your home search anytime, anywhere. Take full advantage of an enriched, mobile-optimized map search experience. Use location services to quickly find homes near you that match your search criteria. Draw your own map boundaries to find homes in a specific area, and apply layers to view school districts, neighborhoods, zip codes, and more. The app's user-friendly design makes it easier than ever to find a home you'll love. Narrow down your search results, save your search criteria, and save your favorite homes. You can browse your saved homes in a list view that puts photos and key details like price and square footage right at your fingertips. Or check out your saved homes displayed on the map.
Hey, welcome back to Fish on Northwest. Dwayne England here in studio. Obviously, you've joined us in the first segment. Tommy Donlin, he is out on the water, lucky dog, and chasing some nice Chinook, and appreciate him taking some time. So we'll get him back in studio next week, and we'll have the band back together, as we say. So with that, Heath Heikkila, first time to the studio.
Hey,
with CCA, and thanks for joining me tonight, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I get the periodic emails from CCA, and I keep up to date, and every once in a while I give Nello a call just to see what you guys are up to, following, because you seem to stay extremely busy. And, you know, as of late, some of the communications coming out of CCA relative to the current ongoings of this Columbia River Gillnet Reform, ROLLBACK as I call it, and others have titled it as well. This initiated back in 2013. Even back when I was doing radio, they came out with this Columbia River Gillnet Reform, potential buyback options with some of the commercial licenses and fleet, and there's this whole program that they laid out there over a number of years as we progress through this thing. And it's been up and going for 7 years. Kind of take us back to how that maybe was developed and the intent on that, and why we were heading in that direction. Then we're going to kind of get into, it almost kind of like plateaued, and now we seem to kind of be inching our way back to years of past. So kind of give us the little history rundown on this thing.
Sure. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, this goes back, obviously you mentioned 2013. It goes on far, you know, beyond that. Prior to that, it's been a movement away from gillnets in the main stem. That was the creation originally of these off-channel areas known as the safe areas that are primarily on the Oregon side of the river. But in 2012 and then into 13, the two states came together with a plan that fundamentally was move the gillnets into the off-channel areas, stock those off-channel areas with increased hatchery production to make up for some of the lost economics and increase hatchery production at the same time, and then really move to fishing methods capable of selective harvest in that lower river. Just because you have 13 listed ESA listed stocks of salmon and steelhead that pass through that lower river, and most of our fisheries in the Columbia are really run on impacts. It's all about what kind of fisheries can we prosecute within the available impacts? How many of the hatchery fish can we actually target within those available impacts? So it was really going to be a priority for sport fishing, given the economic benefits, trying to provide more certainty to sport fishing, not only in the lower river, but as you go all the way up the Columbia. And I heard your segment earlier talking about, Rock Island, all the way up as you're going up. And then really developing alternative selective gear on the commercial side to help us harvest those hatchery fish that we need to harvest to maintain our hatchery production in compliance with federal regulations. So that's kind of the history of all of it. We were supposed to have been originally under the plan zero gill netting in the Columbia River in 2017. There were some extensions made, some compromises made that have limited. Currently, gill nets are only used during the fall in this zones 4 through 5, which is above the Lewis River, just during the fall, targeting upriver brights. So that's where we've been. And as you've mentioned, there's a lot of movement to go backwards to 2013 and beyond.
So the intent was we're going to produce more fish in the lower system. Those fish are going to return to the off-channel areas. We can target those successfully with gill nets. We're going to stay off the main stem, which is the main freeway of all these, especially these 13 endangered, listings. Allow those fish to migrate without interception of a gill net, and still have bountiful harvest for the commercial folks in the side channels. And quite honestly, producing those fish in the lower river also complies with those versus putting in more hatchery fish further up in the system to where they're going to return higher into the system, where you don't have the option of off-channel diversion of targeting. So you are, basically using gillnets and mixed fisheries, which has proven successful in catching, not successful in selectively harvesting, correct? So, when this first was unveiled, I thought, oh, the side channels, okay, and we're producing more fish, and those fish are going to be milling around down in that lower area, and it's all about run timing, and ideally we're focusing on those Chinook, and we're going to stay off that main stem. And then even last year, the verbiage used as far as, hey, we're considering putting our targeting fish in the main stem, but we're going to use tangle nets. And tangle net, in my mind, is a smaller mesh gillnet. They conduct the fishery differently. I've seen fish that come out of tangle nets, and if they're left in there for any length of time and beat themselves around, they get pretty tore up. So it's more selective than a gillnet, but there's still a mortality rate associated with it, isn't there?
Sure, and there's a mortality rate associated with everything, including
us,
including hook and release. Absolutely. And this is really about how do we maximize, what's the best gear for the Columbia River to selectively harvest those hatchery fish that we have to harvest if we want to keep producing them, right? As well as getting as many wild and ESA listed fish back to the spawning ground, some of which go hundreds of miles upriver. And what's the best gear to do that?
And Idaho fish go 465 miles. So you've mentioned a couple of times selective gear, selective harvest, other alternative gear and methods. What are some of the styles of gear or nets or processes that have been discussed and or researched, and how come we haven't been able to move that direction successfully?
Well, first of all, hook and line is an incredibly selective gear, and I think what we've learned over the last 8 years is if you turn anglers loose, they're actually really successiple at catching fish. And we've seen it with sockeye this year. We've seen it with in the fall. They used to say anglers couldn't catch upriver brights in zones 4 and 5. That totally has flipped around. So first and foremost, I'd say hook and line is quite selective. Why this hasn't happened over the last 7 years, I could probably write a book someday about it, but there has been some real problems with the testing that was done on the alternative commercial gear. Really, after 5-6 years, nothing has been done to correct what everyone agrees were inaccurate release mortality rate studies that were done. So, when you talk about this plan and where we're at now, I think there's some really good, if I had to describe it, and actually the department has described it this way, the fundamentals of the plan are still right in terms of what we laid out, in terms of the off-channel areas, in terms of selective harvest, all of that. It was the implementation primarily of the alternative gears, the commercial alternative gears, and the buyback, of which nothing happened for 8 years, that I think were two of the biggest failures in actually making this plan work. So instead of blaming the plan, I think we really need to look at what's gone wrong with the implementation of the plan.
So there's just really, it doesn't sound like there's much interest in some of our commercial folks to be, want to willfully go through that buyback process. They want to hold on to their licenses and they want to fish. So there is documentation, there is video support for the fish trap, the pound net that's been put in down in the lower system. Where is CCA at on looking at the utilization of those types of fish traps? Do they actually work as much as they're being, promoted as to be successful? Is there concerns with those types of processes, and/or is that something that collectively groups need to come together and start moving towards?
And I've said this before, if we want to maintain hatchery production, particularly in the lower river, and it's that tule production that is the heart and soul of the ocean fisheries during the summer, buoy 10 even, there's a lot of tules there. We're going to have to figure out how to harvest those hatchery fish. Otherwise, the Endangered Species Act is going to come into play, and we're going to see further reductions of that hatchery production. So we've got to figure it out. And the pound net, which you mentioned, has been proven to be very successful in the lower river. And then, as I mentioned, recreational hook and line can be quite successful if done the right way. So, and then the seines have showed very promising results when when they first did that testing. And then we had the studies that I mentioned earlier that everyone agrees there were some real errors with them that showed mortality rates that were just off the charts compared to what we saw in their initial testing.
What's the holdback from pursuing, folks in the purse seine options? Is it too much work for too little bounty? It's just not a good means of, I guess, collecting enough fish? I mean, what's the holdup in that regard? Would you have any idea?
Well, first of all, we can't do any of this until these release mortality rates get corrected, because in the Columbia, you're doing everything based on impacts. Sure. So if you're burning a ton of impacts down in the lower river with seines, and these are Thule impacts, it's really going to limit your ability. So that's got to get fixed. And then, it may be a fundamental change to the way we think about the commercial fishery. It may look more like a pound net with several commercial fishermen going in with each other to make that work.
Sure.
And we kind of have to think of the lower river as a service fishery too, whether it's the recreational fishery or a commercial fishery. We have a conservation need, which is to catch those hatchery fish. If we don't do it, we lose the production. So how do we make sure that it is incentivized to be able to make it work? It can work. There are fishermen who did the testing on the seines who said, we can make this work. We can do specialized product. We can have a fresh fish, all of that, and sell to markets that is going to command a price.
Yeah. There's always been that kind of, I don't know, it's been kind of kicked around, a saying that we need to understand from a recreational perspective that, hatchery production is what it is. The amount of fish coming back, we all have an opportunity when the run is conducive to do so. We get our percentage, commercials gets theirs. Recreational cannot catch enough fish to ensure that those hatchery fish aren't going to hit the gravel. Gill nets are absolutely necessary for mop-up. Without gill nets successfully mopping up hatchery strays, these hatchery programs would go away based on impacts to ESA runs. What are your thoughts on that?
To me, I think that's been one of the, really frustrating things in terms of that messaging that's got out there, because, gill nets are a great tool in the off-channel areas where you have, that hatchery production. You want the most intensive, effective gear as possible catching those hatchery fish in the off-channel areas. But in the mixed stock fisheries of the lower Columbia in particular, not a good tool. And in fact, you just look at, I've mentioned the lower river several times because that's where our biggest straying problem is. Quote unquote. They don't even use the gill nets down there because they want to go up and target the upriver brights, and the gill nets, because of their impact and their non-selective manner on the mixed stock fishery down in the lower river, they don't even fish down there. So that was very frustrating. There's actually been statements put out by the department suggesting that very message, that we need them to catch surplus hatchery fish. That is not what's taking place in these mixed stock fisheries. It just doesn't work.
Sure. Well, so where are we sitting right now? The commission is having discussions about reintroducing gill nets into the main stem Columbia, which tells me we're pulling back from the direction it's been heading, with the emphasis being on more hatchery production into those off-channel areas, allowing the commercial fleets to access their fish. In other words, they're having an opportunity to get fish to go to market. And to me, it seems like it should be working. I didn't know if nobody's really told me it hadn't been. So from a commercial, fisherman's perspective, and maybe I need to have that conversation. But what is the emphasis here? Where's the push coming from? And where's the commission sitting currently? Do you even know what their decision-making process is relative to, are we going to reintroduce gill nets into the main stem Columbia, or are we not?
Sure. Well, first I'll say that, the plan, I believe, remains sound in terms of the fundamentals. The implementation has not been. So if you ask the commercial sector, they would say, we've missed out on some of the economics we were supposed to get out of the main stem. So they will say that because alternative gear did not work because of some of this testing problems that I've mentioned. So, but to me, to throw the whole thing out makes zero sense at this point, because you just mentioned we have made up a lot of those impacts out of, with those off-channel production and that economic impact for the commercial industry, a buyback is a key component that, you know, I actually think there is interest in it. And you just have to look. Even before this policy, there were less than 10 Washington Gillnet license holders that landed more than $20,000 in ex-vessel value in that fishery. So the numbers are pretty small in terms of what you're talking to, and it compares to, you know, over 200,000 people who bought the Columbia River salmon and steelhead endorsements in the Columbia River. So where the process is, the commission at its June meeting released a draft policy that was put forward by a subcommittee of the commissioners that would essentially open the door to year-round gill netting again, spring, summer, and fall. So that is up for comment. Folks should absolutely comment to the commission. It is going to be a subject at the July 31, August 1 commission meeting, which will actually be held via webinar again. So people can get online, provide comments, and then I just would say, you know, send your commission an email, the governor's office, and your legislators. You can go to ccawashington.org and visit the Action Center tab, and there's actually a preloaded message that you can personalize, and I recommend personalizing it. Let them know it matters to you, and you can send those emails. And then I just say stay tuned. One interesting aspect of this is Oregon has changed its position in many ways, and where Washington now is beyond where Oregon is. And so if our commission does go this route, it sets the real possibility for real conflict between the two states moving forward on trying to manage this bi-state fishery.
Interesting, because Oregon has substantially more commercial license holders than Washington, do they not? They actually have access right at their back door to those off-channel areas where Washington's fleet has always said, you know, we really don't have opportunity because we can't really comfortably go into that area. It's kind of frowned upon because the Oregon guys are like, hey, get out of here. I get that. There's some headbutting in that regard. But yeah, there's substantially more commercial guys on the Oregon side than there is for us here in Washington. You know, the concerns for a guy like me, a recreational fisher who is trying to keep kind of a thumb on the pulse and watch all the ongoings and in hopes that at some point we're going to turn some of these fisheries around and enough fish for everyone, you know, and to find our way down that path of initiating some selective harvest measures so the commercial guys do have a means of doing what it is they are passionate about. And if we're all working together, I honestly believe we'll be more successful in rebuilding our hatcheries and using science for the betterment of you know, producing fish runs and whatnot. But when we just want to revert back to, hey, we just want to get gillnets back in the main stem, on the heels of just an announcement last week, we're closing once again this season our summer steelhead opportunity on the Columbia, which we did last year. And then, you know, I went through that roller coaster of emotions for some folks on following the successful buoy 10 Chinook opportunity last year and the abundance of Chinook. They then initiated a 5-day opportunity for commercial gillnet harvest on those Chinook as they moved upriver. Okay, you go, well, there's so many fish, they should have opportunity on them. Unfortunately, it also coincided with a very, very dismal outlook for those summer steelhead to the point where everything was closed. No recreational opportunity up on the east side. All of it was shut down. And, you know, for me, all I hear is, well, there's definitely some bycatch with those steelhead in those gillnets, but nobody seems to really care what that impact is. We're more concerned with targeting these Chinook that we feel we have a right to. And we do have a right to those Chinook, albeit if we had selective measures, we would not even be having the conversation. And if we have enough fish for everybody, nobody's fighting over fish. If we have areas of concern and we're always battling ESA, if we have selective measures, then everybody's probably in agreement. But we just can't seem to get there.
Well, we've made some progress in fish recovery, salmon recovery in the Columbia River, but we're also facing some really tough challenges. You mentioned steelhead, so B-run steelhead. I think with a warming climate and the drought we're facing, those fish are going to continually be a challenge. And then Upper Columbia spring Chinook are really facing some conservation concerns. So it really goes back to what are the type of fisheries and the gear that is best suited to a mixed stock fishery with limiting stocks. There are going to, at least in our immediate future, we are going to have limiting stocks in the Columbia River, and we are going to have to be able to manage around those.
Absolutely.
And you know, frankly, as we mentioned, every gear has an impact on fish.
Right.
We also don't know a lot. The gillnet fishery has been monitored 6 times in the last 23 years. That's 6 seasons out of 23. So, you know, that could be 50 seasons or something along those lines. So there's some impacts. We need more look into how we're doing as recreational anglers too. And I'm excited about a hooking release mortality study that's been done on the cowlets that's going to be coming out soon too. So there's a lot of work to be done in the Columbia, but what I do know is going backwards where I think this policy is not the right move. We've actually had the folks that are in charge of salmon recovery in the lower Columbia River, the Fish Recovery Board down there, that has expressed some real concerns about where this policy is heading with these changes.
Well, there's so many obstacles into successfully bringing these fisheries back. I'm going to throw you a curveball. I didn't ask you this prior to, but where does CCA stand, because I haven't ever asked the question, where does CCA stand in predator management? I'm talking birds and pinnipeds, the out-of-control issues that we've seen. Some of the successes that we've seen on the Willamette Falls, removing 33 sea lions, had a tremendous positive impact on the returning wild steelhead the following year. Where does CCA stand, if you don't mind, on predation control?
Well, I was actually very involved in the passage of the federal legislation that authorized the enhanced sea lion removals in the Columbia River. So it has been a high priority. Worked very closely with Congresswoman Herrera Butler, Congressman Kurt Schrader from Oregon to get that legislation passed. We are now finally seeing the benefit of that legislation here very, very soon. You mentioned the Willamette Falls, which was a great example. It just shows the impact that was occurring. But with that legislation, the authority for WDFW, ODF&W, and the tribes to actually go out there and address sea lion predation is going to be, manifestly increased because they don't have to follow some of the rules that had gone along with it before. So it is a major issue, and one that we're continuing to work on, and avian is one too, in terms of in the lower river, Army Corps of Engineers and what's gone on there. The other thing I will mention, and I saw the hatchery and wild sticker there, we have over the last 10 years spent so much time increasing money for hatchery production, increasing funding for hatchery infrastructure, that it's been a huge priority for us. And so hatcheries have a huge role to play too. We've got to couple it though with the right kind of harvest too, so we can live within those federal constraints. If we don't, we're one lawsuit away from getting all sorts of hatchery production shut down, and we're not going to have fisheries without that hatchery production.
Well, really good information. Appreciate you being willing to come on here and kind of, lay it out there of what's going on at the commission level. Obviously, as you stated, remind folks again, you still have time to voice your opinion or your concern to the commission, to the governor, to WDFW, and is there a sunset date on that? When are they reconvene at the end of the month? They're
going to hold either July 31st or August 1 their next regularly commission meeting, and this will be via webinar, so you guys can participate that way. They're going to take public comment on this policy and then on this policy change that has been proposed, and then there may be a vote, and we think probably in September at this point. So it's pretty short time, and but I encourage folks to weigh in. I mean, this is the time to do it. Have your voice heard, and it makes a huge difference. You'd be surprised how much of a difference it makes.
Fantastic. All right, Heath, can't thank you enough. Ran a little long, but it's good information. Hope you folks paid attention. There is a lot going on that's kind of time critical here as we have these discussions moving forward in the efforts to continue going the course in conservation efforts in selective harvest measures versus rolling back to just arbitrarily throwing gillnets into the main stem. So once again, appreciate you taking time for us tonight. Thank you. And don't be a stranger.
Well, we won't. Beautiful place you got here. So appreciate it.
All right. Hey, we're going to jump out for a quick break. When we come back, we're going to reintroduce to some of you Loren Culp. He is running for governor on the Republican ticket. He's generating quite a buzz out there, and he is a very proud and avid outdoorsman, successful hunter and fisher. He has a passion for our outdoors, and he's a man you need to listen to Yes, I get it. There's a lot of things going on in our state currently, in case you haven't noticed. And to take on the seat of governor is a pretty daunting task with a lot of directions coming your way. So there's more to talk about than just fishing and hunting. We'll kind of get into that a little bit, but tonight we're mostly focusing on the Pacific Northwest, fishing and hunting, public land access, and those types of things that you all really want to hear about. So we'll jump out for a quick break. We come back. Loren Culp right here on FHN.
A Northwest favorite for almost 40 years, Arima Boats are manufactured with pride right here in Bremerton, Washington. Arima Boats offers all of our boats with Honda outboard packages so that you can take full advantage of the reliability and 5-year top-to-prop warranty from your Honda outboard. With literally thousands of Arima boats on the water throughout the Pacific Northwest, Arima boats are a proven hull design that offers incredible fuel economy and all of the amenities that a serious angler is looking for. All Arima boats are built without any structural wood materials. That is why we back our boats with a lifetime warranty. All of our Arima boats are designed to maximize deck space while also providing ample seating. Contact us today at Arima Boats for all your boating needs and let us help you get out on the water.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back to Fish on Northwest New England, sitting here live in studio. Glad to be back in studio for our weekly live show. Very happy to introduce our next guest. As I mentioned before the break, familiar face to some, possibly finally getting introduced to a few. Loren Culp, thanks for making the drive over and joining me in studio again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
I wouldn't miss that salmon dip for anything. You know, last time I was here, we had that salmon dip, and you did not disappoint.
Yeah, well, we had to go to Wyoming to get those fish for you.
That works.
But it was well worth it, and happy to pull those out, smoke them up the other day, and give Sherry the opportunity to make that dip. So credit goes to our good friends, the Vanderlindes. Angie Vanderlinde gave Sherry that recipe, and it is fantastic.
It is.
So, yeah.
Yep.
I
traveled all the way across the state.
Came all the way from Republic this morning. What time did you leave this morning?
We left about 9 o'clock. Okay. Ended up getting out of town a little after that. But yeah, traffic was horrible.
Traffic here.
Yeah, construction on the passes, and then traffic as soon as we hit I-5.
Oh yeah.
It was a parking lot for a little while.
We're creeping up on the 4th of July weekend.
Lots of campers.
As we've seen, folks are getting out and about again. We're not staying at home like early on in this entire deal. So, interesting time to be running for political office with all that's going on, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is, definitely. It's and it's happening. Campaign's doing really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, let's touch on that for a bit. So the first time you were here was mid-December, before Christmas. You were just pretty much getting started. You've been out to a few things. Came and met you in Chehalis. And a few days later, you were sitting right here. Right. And we spent 2 hours walking down the path of asking you a ton of questions that would be on any candidate running for governor, because there's a lot of things to consider. And we talked budget, we talked infrastructure, we talked schools, we talked trade schools, we talked about the homeless issue, the drug epidemic. Mm-hmm. We talked about so many topics. And tonight we're going to dial it back down. And we talked about fishing and hunting and WDFW and the commission and predation and all those things too. And that's kind of going to be our focus tonight. If you guys tuning in, first time of getting to hear Loren, first of all, every Wednesday you do a live
on Facebook at Culp for Governor, 6:30 every Wednesday, and we're live on Facebook for an hour. I talk about different subjects and take live question and answers. Yeah,
and you cover the gamut. And the question and answer thing for folks, if you're watching tonight and we don't talk about our roads falling apart or the amount of garbage that is strewn about the medians down the highways or polluted waterways or the homeless encampments or the drug epidemic, all those things. And let's not even go to what's happened as of late up in Seattle, the lack of leadership and the embarrassment that exists in our state currently, right? If you want to talk about all that stuff, every single Wednesday you are live and approachable, reachable via technology, correct? And or attend one of your live rallies, which is on Culp for Governor. They can see all the dates that you have coming up and come meet you and shake your hand face to face.
Yep, I have those rallies going on all over the state. Like you said, it's on our website, culpforgovernor.com. And there's an events page on there. Check it out and come on out and see me live. Afterwards, I hang around until nobody wants to talk to me anymore.
Yeah.
And meet and greet everybody.
That's fantastic.
So there are a lot of people out there.
Yeah, so we're gonna keep it dialed in here in the realm of what this target audience mostly is curious about. And I put a couple posts out there over the last few days and have been swamped with a number of questions in the realm of outdoors, fishing, hunting, land access, and all those things. It's no secret. Our fishing and hunting, WDFW and those that make decisions, we kind of need an overhaul here in Washington State. It seems like we've been going down this path. They're doing the best they can. We've covered extensively on this show, the budget shortfalls, the difficulties WDFW's had in maintaining levels of service with lack of money, and it's gone up and down. This last year they were successful in securing budget. I think we're good until 2021. But there's a lot of change that needs to come about. And we hear buzz phrases quite often, hatchery reform. This last year with Inslee's Orca Task Force, and we touched on it in December when you were here previously. We're gonna produce more fish. We're gonna feed the orcas, and we're gonna, the budget, as you've made a point of time and time again. We have a tremendous budget in availability of monies in Washington State, but in your mind, quite often it's mismanaged. I believe, and if I'm wrong, Chase or somebody else will jump on here and let me know. I believe WDFW receives 0.05% of the general fund as part of their allotment for their budget. It's very hard to build and rebuild and try to get Washington State to be recognized as a destination fishery and somewhere to come hunting when you have very little money to keep up with the times, the demand, the amount of people, the issues that need to be resolved, the infrastructure talking hatcheries and infrastructure supporting fisheries and whatnot, that needs to be brought back up without monies. Is it possible for a governor to actually take a look at an overall budget and recognize WDFW for what it can be and allocate more monies towards that to make it successful versus continuing to fall behind the times?
Well, yeah, it just takes someone in there with the knowledge and the background. You know, I don't even think Jay Inslee knows which end of a fishing pole to hold on to, seriously.
That's probably a true statement.
I've been a hunter and fisherman my entire life. You know, back in the 70s when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, this was a destination, you know, and far past that as well, for people to come from all over the country to go fishing, because we had great fisheries. Yeah. But we have a lack of leadership in there right now. People that either don't know what they're doing or don't care. There's not a lack of money. You know, 8-9 years ago, just before Jay Inslee came into office, the state budget was approximately $30 billion a year, right? And he's been in office for 8 years, and the budget has almost doubled. It's almost 8 years. It's almost to $60 billion a year.
Holy cow.
That's over $1 billion a week that this state government takes from the citizens, you know, because it doesn't produce anything, right? It's not a company selling products.
Right.
That's money that's coming from the citizens.
60 billion. 52 weeks in a year.
Almost 60 billion a year. And so we don't have a revenue problem in this state. We're taxed to death, obviously, because that's coming from the hard-working, playing hard Americans. So we have a priority problem. And that's where I want to get it fixed. You know, I want to reduce how much is taken from the taxpayers, obviously, because it hurts families, it hurts businesses.
Right.
But then prioritize where the money's being spent.
And you understand that because you owned a small business for 20 years.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. You know, I'm a veteran, the only veteran running for governor.
Right.
I served in the United States Army under President Ronald Reagan. And then after the military, I got out in '84. I worked for other companies right in the Olympia area for 3 or 4 years, learned the trades, learned how to build houses, and then started my own company in 1988. Ran it for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And spent that time hunting and fishing all around the Olympic Peninsula, southwestern Washington. My family we get together and elk hunt down by Mount St. Helens every year.
Yeah, so you understand government red tape, complexities of allowing a man or woman to make it as a small business owner.
Absolutely.
With too much government intervention. And you also understand where things used to be relative to fishing and hunting in this state. And granted, there's a lot of things impacting that, and we're not, you know, we get it. Population has exploded. You know, we're consuming more ground and land than we're allowing to be left for, you know, habitat and for the critters and for the fish, and it all has an effect. But at the end of the day, if we're not increasing or finding a means of increasing funding to support these programs, and I'm just a dumb fisherman, but when I sit back and watch how things unfold, it's always crisis management. There wasn't the forethought to build some type of program out in front of. It was ultimately until the orcas collapsed that we all of a sudden find millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Well,
and with Jay Inslee, it's to feed the orca.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I love orca. They're beautiful. I've seen them in the wild. You know, I want them to have salmon, but I'm more concerned about the citizens of Washington State and a huge industry that's been lost. You know, I was out in Westport not too long ago and talking to the folks out there. Yeah. There used to be 300 charter boats that worked out of Westport alone.
Right.
Not to mention all the other ports around the state. And now there's 28 charter boats
out of Westport.
And that's because the fisheries are so bad. Right. You know, that's a huge industry. Every boat's got a captain and a crew, plus, you know, that are making living wage, and then all the support facilities on shore. You know, the hotels, the airlines, the restaurants, you know, the fishing and tackle stores. So we need to bring that back, but we have to prioritize it. You know, there's so much money wasted in the state government right now because we have people that don't know how to manage. And I could go over a million different things that Jay Inslee's mismanaging, but that would bore your audience because most of us know already.
So, you know, we have multiple user groups within our fishing and hunting opportunities here in Washington State. It's no secret. We have our recreational contingent. We have, you know, tribal folks that are involved, obviously, for harvest purposes and salmon recovery. They put a lot of effort into salmon recovery as well. In some cases, if the tribes weren't involved, there'd be a lot of fisheries we would not be doing right now. Correct. So, and then we have our commercial fleet too that has buy-in in, was the genesis back in the day for hatcheries because they could see the handwriting on the wall. They cannot just keep removing fish non-selectively year after year and think that there's going to be more fish to come back. So they started seeding the entire state for the most part with a lot of fish. So we have multiple user groups. There tends to be a lot of, infighting. Everybody wants their piece of the pie. How do you see it moving forward? To me, it seems like if we would begin to start working more collectively together, we're going to be better off.
Well, yeah, everybody's infighting, the commercial, the tribes, the sport fishermen, over scraps. That's my opinion. Everybody's fighting over scraps compared to the way our fisheries used to be. And again, that just takes someone in office that makes it a priority, and I will. Like I said, we're spending double the amount we were about 8 to 10 years ago. The roads aren't any better. Our fisheries are crap. So it's a priority problem. There's a ton of money wasted. I have friends that work in several of the departments in the state government, and there's a ton of redundancy. People doing the same thing. But that's what you end up with when you have someone who thinks that government is the answer for everything. You create positions, you hire more people. And, I'm not advocating going in and firing all the people that work for the state. We need our state government, but we need it under control. When people retire, they don't necessarily have to be replaced, right? So we can cut down on that. We can cut down on waste.
Cut down on spending.
One of the ways that I'm going to cut down on the spending is to push a zero-based budget. Right now, the way that our budgeting is set up is whatever the budget was for a department last year, we'll add a percentage to it, and that's pretty much how they run things and have for 35 years in this state. But if we have a zero-based budget where each department has to justify what they need the money for ahead of time, then we know what it's being spent on. But right now, when they have a budget set and it increases every year, at the end of the fiscal year, if there's money left over in the budget, and there always is, they go on a spending spree. And they waste millions and millions of dollars buying things that they don't need, but they don't want to miss out on getting that amount of money plus an increase for the next budget cycle. So we go to zero base where it's justified ahead of time, and we know where it's being spent. I mean, to go from 30 to 60 billion in an 8 to 10 year period, that's huge.
So
that's a lot of money.
Accountability, justification for spending, right?
You can't run a private business the way this state's been run. You can't run your household that way.
So you've taken some time to begin to get educated on what is the North of Falcon process. Now, from the governor's office, you don't really have a hand in on that, other than you have to have a good understanding of how that all works. And there's a lot of I don't want to say misconception, but there's a lot of folks that truly believe that what happens behind the closed doors between WDFW and the tribes doesn't always represent the recreational angler or hunter in the best interest. There's a lot of behind doors deals that go down, and then they come to the public and allow you to sit in on meetings or listen and have opportunity to speak. But it seems that falls on deaf ears because the agreements have already been done. And there's a lot of folks that believe that WDFW has no power and that the tribes have all the power in this decision-making process. And I don't know how from the governor's office you can actually intervene, get an understanding as to what's going on and find balance. But I think a high majority of folks here in Washington State who want to be involved with fishing and hunting would like to see fair and balance. The Bold decision in 72 kind of revamped in 74, and that couple year time frame, it was well drawn out, and there were margins in there that were very very on point in 50-50 allocation in regards to a lot of things, and it is so far skewed from that with all the agreements that happen relative to shellfish. It crosses over, and then because you have that, we're going to get so much over here, and because this level is here, you're only going to get percentage over here. There's a lot of this that goes on, a lot of shifting versus and maybe it's too complicated. Maybe you can't just look at fisheries anymore and go, okay, we're focused on this fishery. What's the what's the forecast? What's the allocation? How do we split this? For all user groups to get their fair share. And then how do we take this particular fishery and everybody's getting their fair share? We're not going to do this back and forth and one is holding the power here. That is truly the census of the fishing community and how our fisheries are run. I try to be cautious with what I say because there's a lot of people that watch this show and kind of that fine line we go down when we talk about these political things in nature. But at the core of it, Loren, somebody has to step in at some point and reestablish balance in the state of Washington, draw on the user groups to work collectively, and find means of success in rebuilding our fisheries. And I just don't see any leadership at the top that is willing to once in a while go, no, we're not doing that. And if we can't come to agreement, then we're going to have to go to the next level. Whether that's bringing in the feds, getting assistance from the feds or not, or do we have to try to remove the feds from some of the levels we should be handling our own? And is there an opportunity for Washington State to take on more responsibility?
Well, yeah, I get asked that a lot. Well, how are you going to fix our fisheries? Because a lot of it's set by federal rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. But I'm a firm believer in the rule of law and the Constitution, right? And call me ignorant. I've never been a politician before, mm-hmm. so I don't know what their rules are that they're following. But so I'm not going to go in there and go, okay, this is how we've done it. We're going to keep doing it, right? Because I haven't been in that system.
Sure.
I have private business background, and I know how things should be run. And I have a secret weapon as well. People ask me, well, how are you going to get around all the federal rules and the federal regulations and the federal government overseeing fisheries, right? And that goes along with not just fish, but the predators as well. Mm-hmm. But I have a secret weapon that I'm going to share with you and your viewers right now.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
It's in your pocket?
It is. It's right here.
Oh.
It's called the Constitution of the United States of America.
Okay.
All right, and I'll read just something real quick to you guys. It's the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution, and it says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So I've read the Constitution of the United States, and I haven't seen anywhere in there where that's a constitutionally enumerated power that the federal government has. Mm-hmm. And so as governor, I will exercise our 10th Amendment power mm-hmm. to regulate our fisheries, because that's part of our state. The rivers, the waters around Washington State belong to Washington State.
Right.
So the federal government can help us, but they're not going to hinder us.
So you're basically saying you are willing to take on more responsibility to the rights that have been given us as Washington State residents and Washington State government to stay on top of that and make sure the feds aren't overstepping their bounds, and have been maybe in some regards for quite some time, because nobody has pushed back to say, whoa, that's the line and you're crossing it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like, kind of like Jay Inslee right now. He cares about our health so much that he's going to tell us to stay home and go broke.
Right.
Well, who cares more about our fisheries than Washington State residents?
Right.
Right? And we need to take back that power mm-hmm. if the federal government is overstepping its bounds. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I don't think, if President Trump is the president when I'm governor, I don't think there'll be much pushback there.
Yeah.
Because it's the rule of law. That's the way that it's set up.
Yeah.
All we have to do is exert our responsibility and our power as a state and say, we're handling this. We'll take care of it.
And obviously approach it with a sound plan.
Absolutely.
That is driven by conservation science.
And with the mindset that we're going to cooperate.
Right.
Not just with the federal government, but we are going to be firm. I am going to be firm. This is a states' right issue.
Yeah.
This is our fisheries. This is our wildlife.
Right.
And also bring on the tribes and the commercial and the sport fishermen and get together and get this figured out. Get our hatcheries putting out like they should be. You know, take care of the predators. I've already talked to a couple tribes, and they have historically hunted pinnipeds.
Right.
So we don't have to leave them overpopulated at the mouths of rivers or at the base of dams. You know, there's a huge market for that type of thing.
Right.
Not to mention that they would use some of that themselves.
Sure.
So, and I'm not talking about totally eliminating predators. Obviously, we need a balance.
Right.
But we have to manage that, and nobody's been managing that in this state.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is that you got to find balance. And I like the fact that you recognize you'd be, and excuse me for saying this, but you'd be ignorant not to simply think the government and the recreational community is going to, hey, we got this. This is a collective effort between recreation, tribal for sure, and commercial. They all have a hand in it. And I think I've heard you say it at more than one rally. You know, if we're all working together and everybody's catching fish, then there's no issues. Right. When we're fighting over
we're
scraps.
We're not fighting over scraps.
This is where the complexity of it is.
And another thing that we need to get under control is, you know, it wasn't too long ago. You could go fishing or you could go hunting, and you didn't have to stop at your lawyer's office.
Correct.
To look through the regulations and figure out if you're legal, and you didn't have to check them every 10 minutes to make sure they haven't changed. Right. But they start doing that because that's what government does, right? It just keeps on building upon itself.
It's very complicated. Very complicated.
More and more regulations because that's what bureaucrats think is their job.
I go fish in other states with high populations of persons, abundance of resource to go out and enjoy, and the regulations are pretty straightforward and simple. Pamphlets are extremely thin. You can get online and scroll through a couple pages and know exactly what you can and can't do. When I was a kid, it was a pamphlet. You know, now it's... Like this right here? Exactly. I was going to say, I remember seeing that before. Yeah, it's a little... 1971, and we didn't have a shortage of fish. We didn't have a shortage of game. Right. But it was a pamphlet. That's called living in a free state. We didn't have government overreach. Right. Yeah. But it's just... It's compounding upon itself, and it's been under Democrat control for 35 years. Yeah. And it just keeps building up and building up. And we need to start paring that back and get back to individual freedom and liberty, what this country was founded on. I can appreciate the fact, again, that you are talking collectively, working, you know, unified amongst the user groups, in that you, as governor and overseeing the government of this state, is willing to take on more responsibility, take on rightfully what is ours to govern and manage, not overstep, but, you know, intervene with programs that would be successful without having to answer to the federal government every time we turn around and want to put a fish back in the water. Exactly. So, yeah. It's our resource. All right. Good stuff. We've scratched the surface. We got more to talk about. We're going to jump out for a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Get all your friends to log in. Lots of questions flying off here. Not sure how many I can answer specifically on here. If I don't get to them via discussion, I'll go back later after the show and peruse them and hopefully provide answers. But more with Loren Culp, the future governor of Washington State, when we come back right here on FHN. Defiance boats are built without any structural wood materials. That is why we back our boats with a lifetime warranty. All of our Defiance boats come standard with large fish boxes that are fully insulated so that you can ice your fish properly all day. Defiance boats feature a 21 to 22 degree dead rise at the transom and a large reverse chine for incredible handling and stability offshore. Defiance boats are foam flotation filled and unsinkable for the ultimate in safety while fishing offshore. Defiance boats feature fuel-efficient hull designs with large fuel tank capacity so that you can have maximum fuel range for making long offshore runs completely safe and affordable. All Defiance boats come standard with self-bailing decks for improved safety while at sea. Defiance Boat offers all our boats with Honda outboard packages so that you can take full advantage of the reliability and 5-year top-to-prop warranty from your Honda outboard.
Defiance Boats for all your boating needs, and let us help you get out on the water.
Welcome back to Fish on Northwest, Wayne England in studio after 2 weeks on the road. Glad to be back in here, and our good buddy Loren Culp graciously made the drive across the treacherous mountain range and found his way here in your RV, Clark, and is sitting in the
right.
Yep, sitting in the studio for a couple segments here. So we discussed a whole lot in that first segment, and the information piling on here with the comments is very supportive. People like what they're hearing. I think the 10th Amendment is one that folks are hearing for the first time.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a huge Constitution supporter.
Mm-hmm.
That's how most people heard about me originally, is I stood up for citizens' rights.
Yeah, you did.
You know, and so, yeah, I think it's very important. You know, if our government stays within the rule book, which is the Constitution, is the rule book for our government. You know, if they stay within the confines of that, then we get a lot more freedom, and the government's sucking up a lot less money that we work hard for.
Right. So this question has come up a few times, and when Barnum was here with me, we brought it up and had a discussion about it, and I posed the question to you a few times, and I think your answer is spot on. But, you know, basically, us as residents of Washington State, we have a privilege to go out and enjoy fishing and hunting and access public lands, and it's a privilege. There's a small movement. This happened down in Texas, and somehow they rolled it through, and it was voted on and became true. Fishing and hunting is a right. As a citizen of Washington State, I have rights. One of my rights is that I get to go fishing and hunting, and I get to access public lands that are managed by the state, and then there's the federal allotment as well. But as a citizen of Washington State, because I live here, reside here, you know, pay my taxes and work, and this is where we belong, we have rights. And how is it that I cannot? It seems it would be more favorable to me if it was a recognized right. In other words, somebody at the negotiating table that is fighting for our fisheries and for our ability to go hunt and our ability to be on public land. It's like, well, it's a right of the citizens of Washington State to do so, so I'm going to fight for it. Oh, it's a privilege. Okay, what kind of agreement can we come to? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So is that a far-fetched dream? Is it achievable, or does it not make sense?
Well, the only thing that worries me, like I said, I've been a lifelong fisherman and hunter. The only thing that worries me if we go that direction, it's going to have to be worded very carefully. Yeah. Because right now we have a First Amendment right to peaceably assemble and speak our mind and go to the church we want to go to. We have a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, and not to mention Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution. Yes. Yeah. But we don't have to pay for those. Those are given to us by our Creator, and government is there to protect those rights. Right. The thing that I see, and I'm sure it could be worded correctly, to where it is a right to go fishing, but to have the government charge me a fee to peaceably assemble or freely speak or my Second Amendment, I'm not good with that. Sure. And so if it never happened, right? So right. Yeah. And so that's the only thing that worries me. I don't want to be paying for a right. Sure. Because if we start paying for a right to go hunting or fishing, and the government's charging a fee for it, then they could say, well, we're charging you for this right. We're going to charge you for a permit to speak or to buy a firearm. Yeah, I see how that could be a slippery slope. But I think that it could probably, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not good at crafting different things like that. I haven't yet, no. Okay. But if it could be worded correctly, then I'd be all for that. Yeah, I mean, it just seems it can be mighty powerful if it's a right that can be, backed up. And it's like, no, it's like we have that right, and until you come to me with something else, we're not giving up that right. And right. So I see what folks are thinking in that regard. When I first heard about it or gave it thought, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I would feel like somebody's at the table fighting for me, right? Versus just passively going, well, okay, we have to come to some kind of agreement here. Because they should have the opportunity to go fishing. Very passive, very, you kind of got to make sure that they're getting a few fish too. Well, right, yeah. And then Jay Inslee, took that from us when COVID first started, right? You said you can't go fishing. Yeah. But I don't want to get off in the weeds there because there's so many stupid things that he's done. But I'm for it being a right, but it would have to be very carefully crafted before I would sign it into law. Sure. Because I don't want it to end up down the road where we're ending up having the government saying, well, you need to pay for your other rights as well. Right. That's what worries me. But definitely open to taking a look at that. Over the last couple of years, it's now 2020. Technology is booming. I mean, we have innovations coming out daily, weekly. Every time you turn around, I'm getting to that point now as a grandfather, I can't keep up with the latest and greatest cell phone, so we have our challenges, right? That being said, how is it we find ourselves? I think I know the answer because everything comes down to money, but every year we seem to run into a few hatchery snafus where we lose hundreds of thousands of smolt. And I don't know if anybody's checked lately, but we're managing these fisheries down to a gnat's ass, and we cannot afford to lose abundance of fish in the hatchery or at smolt release or whenever it is or whatever the cause, whether it's a disease in the rearing ponds, whether it's a water temperature mishap, whether it's a generator shutting down. As governor of the state, where do we find the money to renovate these hatcheries, bring them up online to be, state of the art, and or at least workable to the point that we're not going to have issues, we're not going to have dead loss, we're not going to have these problems that keep plaguing us. Because again, it's 2020. I would think we would be able to, with a sound budget and competent people, which there are a lot of them at WDFW, contrary to popular belief. There are a lot of very smart people that work for the agency. I would like to think that we could move to the next step, upgrade our hatcheries, build new hatcheries where warranted, be state-of-the-art in how we integrate stocks, brood stock where applicable to really start bringing back our wild fish that need help in that regard, and move forward with technology and stop having these shortcomings. How do we get there? Well, you're talking about having people, the people at the top, the people actually out doing the work, there's a lot of competent people that work for this state. Yep. The people that are hands-on and taking care of the citizens, right? That's the role of our government, is to serve the citizens. But you're talking about people at the top that just handed over $1 billion, you know, to some Nigerian person. Yeah. Right. There's safeguards in place, but they failed to use them. Sure. So I'm not sure that things are gonna change until people at the top change, and then replace them with people who have the same mindset that I do, that the government's here to serve the citizens, and we need to do it at least expensive as possible. Mm-hmm. But there is technology out there. You know, I don't know how you end up with a generator dying and nobody knows about it, right? Mm-hmm. I have a $150 security camera at my house. Mm-hmm. A couple of them, if any criminals are watching. Yeah. That notifies me if there's motion. You know, you take it home, you get it out of the box, you plug it in, right? This is cheap, $150 camera, right? And it will notify me on my phone if it detects motion or if it hears sound, and I can look at it on my phone from anywhere that I have a phone service. Yeah, anywhere in the world. You know, and so why they have this problem at these hatcheries is because of mismanagement and people that don't care. And it starts at the top. Mm-hmm. That's why we gave $1 billion away to people that didn't deserve unemployment. Sure. So to wonder why things are happening at hatcheries that shouldn't, and why we don't have technology there as a safeguard to warn people that, hey, you know, the pumps just went out, or the generator just stopped, or the water's getting too hot. It's simple. You just have to have people that make it a priority. Right. And like I said earlier, there's plenty of funding. Mm-hmm. We just need to cut the waste. It starts with leadership. Yep. $1 billion a week. I'm sure we could find a little bit of money in there to put some kind of security things at the hatcheries. Yeah. It's just a priority problem right now. We kind of touched on this last time you were here in studio, but I want to kind of revisit it. As governor, you are tasked with appointing commissioners to the Fish and Wildlife Commission. 9 positions. At some point, you confirm those folks to be in their seat. In your mind, what are some strong attributes, or what kind of person needs to be seated in those commission chairs? Because I can tell you, they generally push forward persons with a strong education background. You'll have some form of biologists in there, persons who understand maybe land management, persons from the private sector, albeit teachers or professors. These folks are educated. I'm not so sure a lot of them bring their credentials from a background in the outdoors. I'm just trying to find balance and/or, from a governor's vision, what makes that ideal person that you would push forward into that seat to represent the commission in the state of Washington, to oversee the development and the future development and the positive progression of our fisheries and hunting. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that the director of WDFW is not appointed by the governor, but the commission are. And so when their tenure's up, then the governor has the ability to put someone new in there, if he chooses. Yep. And I think it's kind of important that we have people on the commission that actually spend a lot of their free time in the outdoors, that hunt and fish, because that's what the commission is all about, is to manage our hunting and fishing. And so that's the number one priority right there, that they have a vested interest in the hunting and fishing in this state. Well, because they're tasked with creating policy, correct? And you'd be hard-pressed to go into any other facet, direct somebody to write me a policy in regards to this, and they know nothing about it. Exactly. Or they don't do it, they don't partake in it, they don't participate, it's not something they do. It would be like my son coming to me when he's a teenager and saying, "Dad, I need you to write me a 25-page policy on the proper ethics of skateboarding." I have no idea. I don't do it. I don't have hands on it. I'm not. But you could figure something out to write. Well, I could probably look things up, and that's what they do. I could draft it together, and I would bounce it off you, one of my other skateboard commissioners, and we'd be like, "Well, that sounds pretty cool, but no, we should probably go with the wider wheels, because as we get older, we're going to want more stability. So that we should write that in." I mean, in reality, you really don't know because you're not in the real world doing it. Right.
Yeah.
It'd be like hiring a contractor that has never built a house before.
Right.
But he took a shop class in high school.
Yeah.
You know, and now he's a contractor.
To be fair, there are those on the commission that do hunt and fish, right? But
that's what we need more of.
That's exactly it, right? We need more of. So, just trying to gain a perspective from you sitting as governor. What does that person look like? How well-rounded do they need to be? Is education everything, or do they need to be? Yeah, you need to have an understanding of what it is you are directing and writing policy for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If you've never hunted or fished, it's kind of hard to direct a department that deals with hunting and fishing.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying that the people on there are not good people. You know, but we want to make sure that they have a vested interest. You know, in not just observing, but hands-on.
Yep. I know you've mentioned multiple times predation issues are of concern in Washington State. The wolf issue recovery plan is in full motion, and we've talked about it, discussed it quite a bit here on the show. We had Julia Smith in last year, who is the wolf recovery coordinator for WDFW. She's a wealth of knowledge. It's a complex issue, and there's plenty of wolves in the northeast quadrant. Obviously,
there's a ton of wolves.
Okay, and we have multiple times a year where we're dealing with issues with ranchers and depredation and those types of things. And the overall plan is designed to recognize 3 zones, of which once the wolves migrate and they get a certain number of breeding pair in all zones, to where they can effectively delist the entire state. Right, so they would be delisted as endangered. That's not going to happen until those wolves migrate into that North Cascade and into the South Coastal. I'm just not sure if there's willingness on behalf of the department, without somebody intervening from the top, to come down and say, okay, we continue to let the wolf population in this northeast quadrant expand, and then we have more depredation issues, and then we kill wolves to control them. Meanwhile, we're not expanding. There's a very light discussion on capture and relocate to expand them into those other zones so you could recognize breeding pair, you can get the populations to where they're supposed to be, and then you delist the state. Now, if you live in those other zones and the wolves aren't there, you're saying, do not bring them here, we don't want them. Unfortunately, the state plan, recovery plan, dictates that they will be there, but unfortunately they're waiting for Mother Nature to do so, and at the cost of what's going on over on your side of the state and up in that northeast quadrant. So have you looked into it all that much? Do you think there's some adjustments that might need to be made in how we're managing this wolf repopulation program? Or do you think it's on par doing what it's supposed to do and we're just going to have to wait for it to happen?
No, I don't think it's doing what it's supposed to do. And it's not just wolves. It's other predators.
Yeah.
You know, cougars are overpopulated in this state. Just a month or so ago, a cougar was right downtown in Republic that got put down by a deputy.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more and more of that, cougars and bears and coming into residential areas. And the wolves, in northeastern Washington are overpopulated. Mm-hmm. They're killing cattle all the time, and with the bears and the cougars, and the wolves, those are all apex predators, mm-hmm. That are very, very populated. We used to hunt with dogs in this state, that helped to control the bears and the cougars. But that was banned through a citizen initiative in the 90s. So they're very, very populated. I mean, they were back then. So it becomes a public safety issue, right? Especially with the cougars and the bears, as the wolves get more populated, it's going to be a public safety issue as well.
Yeah.
I don't like to see the state, from Olympia dictating to the entire state how predator populations are going to be in each county, right? Who knows better, someone in Olympia, how to manage your household, or you right here in your household, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And the sheriffs in every county, they're the supreme law enforcement officer in that county, and they are responsible for the public safety of the citizens in their county.
Sure.
So and the county commissioners in each county live right there. They know what's going on in their counties. And I want more local control, because the closer government is to the citizens, the easier it is for the citizens to control that government.
Sure.
I mean, imagine if everything that came from the government came from Washington, D.C. To us,
Nightmare.
right? We would have no control. We would have no say on anything.
Yeah.
And then, you step down to the state level, and the state is mandating things across the entire state.
Right.
Things that might not fit in Okanagan County, that might fit in King County.
Sure.
And I want to see it more of the responsibility brought more local. So
down to the county level.
County commissioners and the sheriff.
Small city government.
Right. Because ultimately they're responsible,
right,
for the citizens in their community. Yep. and the property as well, and the public safety.
Yep. Well, I mean, I could see, county jurisdiction working with WDFW and understanding, population density of certain critters, which ones are becoming problematic, how to intervene, and make decisions at the county council level or the city council level. Mm-hmm. Hey, do we need, because we have the ability to make this decision, do we need to reintroduce the ability of hunters to use dogs in our jurisdiction to help control the bear and cougar population? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Right. Because it comes to be a public safety issue,
right,
and that's the county sheriff's responsibility.
Yep.
And they're right there. They live in that county. Yep. They know what's going on in that county. The county commissioners know what's going on there. To have things dictated from Olympia just doesn't make sense to me. And then local citizens would have more control as well over what's going on in their county, affecting their lives and their property. It
fits within the model that you preach time and time again in allowing it to get back down to the level of the people, allowing it to get back down to the jurisdictional government versus overseen from clear up top at the state level,
right,
dictating the same exact rationale to every location in the state when it only fits maybe one spot in the state.
I've got the same viewpoint on the COVID-19 virus.
Yeah.
Local county officials, the sheriff, the county commissioners, city councils, they know what's going on in their county.
Yep.
We don't need a dictator sitting in Olympia and telling everybody across the state, just making a blanket statement on what's going to happen.
King County is not the model for the entire state.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, so we've ran a little over. I do have a few more questions. Can I keep you around for 5 or 10 more minutes?
Okay, I'm here.
Sure? Okay. We're going to do that then. We got a few more things to cover. We're going to jump out for a quick break. When we come back, more with Loren Culp. Josh, just jump back and play. Let's go back to commercial set number 2 so we don't roll out that video uncontrollably. You with me? Okay, we can do that. So we'll jump out for a quick break. More with Loren Culp when we come back right here.
Marine is the one-stop shop for the Pacific Northwest angler. Whether you are looking for a small skiff to fish the Sound or rivers or a huge offshore tuna machine, Defiance Marine has it. At Defiance Marine, be sure to power your boat with a Honda outboard package. Take advantage of the reliability and 5-year top-to-prop warranty on your Honda outboards. Our service department is always here to help and serve you as the customer. Did you know Defiance Marine has boat financing experts to help get you the best term rates on your new boat purchase? If you need financing for that new boat, call us today. We guarantee the best price, best service on a repower for your current boat. Defiance Marine is a Honda Premier dealership and one of the largest on the West Coast. Defiance Marine also carries all the gear that you will need. Everything from auxiliary kicker motors to fishing tackle and bait. Defiance Marine has certified technicians that are top-notch at their job. Some of the best in the Pacific Northwest at evaluating your boat issues and problems. Stop in today or give us a call for all your needs at Defiance Marine.
It's easier than ever to browse homes and connect with an agent on the go with Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate's mobile app. With the app, your home search is synced across all of your devices, so you can pick up your home search anytime, anywhere. Take full advantage of an enriched, mobile-optimized map search experience. Use location services to quickly find homes near you that match your search criteria. Draw your own map boundaries to find homes in a specific area, and apply layers to view school districts, neighborhoods, zip codes, and more. The app's user-friendly design makes it easier than ever to find a home you'll love. Narrow down your search results, save your search criteria, and save your favorite homes. You can browse your saved homes in a list view that puts photos and key details like price and square footage right at your fingertips. Or check out your saved homes displayed on the map.
Well, welcome back to FHN, the extended version with Loren Culp, running for governor. I appreciate you not telling me no.
Absolutely.
So, while you're here, and I'll make it up to you. We'll send you home with some of that salmon dip.
Okay, you got a deal. We'll stay for 3 or 4 more segments if you want me to.
We're here for an hour. Hey, Loren, so, I get a handful of questions. You've answered a number of them very well, in my opinion. A lot of them have to do with money. When it comes to managing natural resources here in the state of Washington, it comes down to money. Well, leadership and willingness to do so as well, and not just give it off to somebody else. It's not my problem, go handle it. So public lands is one that continues to come up. People are very concerned. One thing that's happening is as developers buy up land and we sprawl out, we lose more public access. Due to some behavioral characteristics of certain populations in our culture that go off out in the woods and leave a whole lot of things behind that are detrimental to a clean environment. Timber companies and whatnot put locks on gates. States' budgets at times don't allow them to manage their public lands as they would like to because of shortfalls. You've already said we're spending $1 billion a week. I would like to think that if the monies are allocated to do so, or somebody in Olympia sees it as a priority, recognizing that persons want to have access to public state lands for hiking, biking, backpacking, fishing, hunting, whatever it is, firewood, Christmas tree harvest, you name it, right? All times of the year, we should be able to have that and not have gates put on it because of simply bad choices, poor management practices, and we don't have it in the budget to do so. One of the issues that comes up periodically, feds go, we no longer need to hold on to this, however many thousands of acres. We want to give it back to the state to manage. State goes, okay, thanks, and they sit on it. They put gates on it. They don't allow you access because they don't have it in their budget to do so. They didn't plan for it. So now it's locked off. And then a few more years might go by. It's a timber stand or it's whatever it is. The best resolve is to simply sell it to private industry or private companies because they're going to get several $1 million again for their budget, and then they no longer have to worry about it. Problem is, it was federal, it was state, and now it's private. Guaranteed it's locked up, less access for citizens of Washington State. How do we close that loophole? How do we, if in fact the federal government wants to give us land, you're the governor, it's not going to cost you anything other than maintain that property.
Right, and how much does it take to maintain it? A couple 100,000 acres or 1 million acres of wild land, right? I don't see where the problem is. And like I said, they're selling, like you said, they're selling that land, they're getting a few $1 million for it. But remember, our state government is spending $1 billion a week right now, right? So what's $1 million? It's like 3 or 4 cents to you and me.
Sure.
It's not a big amount of money. So I think it's important to keep that public land and keep it open for the citizens and manage our public lands like we used to do. When we used to go in and thin them and log them, Jay Inslee always talks about global climate change as the reason we've had these catastrophic wildfires. Yeah. But it's because of mismanagement. The fires start because of lightning or man-made, right? But they burn really, really hot because there's a ton of fuel in our forest lands. They're not managed. They're not thinned. We don't clean up the carbon on the forest floor. Right. And then since the early 90s, I've hunted all the time around the Olympic Peninsula. Federal and state land, they started shutting down in the early 90s. Right. They dig a trench out at the beginning of the road, and then they put a gate across. And a lot of them, they brought in heavy equipment, completely taking the roads out. Right. So when there is a fire, the firefighters don't have access to get back in to fight it. And more importantly, the public doesn't have access to get in and enjoy our natural resources, to cut firewood, to hunt, to fish, to use that land.
Yeah.
And managing it correctly also brings income in. You know, if you say the federal government gives us a million acres, if you were a private business owner and somebody handed you 1 million acres, I guarantee you could make a darn good living off of that by managing it, thinning it, logging it, replanting it, because it's a renewable resource.
Right.
And that brings in revenue to the state that can be used to manage it.
The amount of dead wood out there that hasn't been harvested, the underbrush that hasn't been removed, not managing our forests like a renewable resource like you're talking about. You know, you're putting people to work.
Exactly.
They're harvesting wood before it gets so bad that there's no market for it.
And there's a lot of timber sales that could be multi-million-dollar timber sales.
And you're not talking about going in and clear cutting, you know, every hillside. You're talking about managing forests. I used to do thinning operations when I was logging. It's one of the most healthy things you can do for a forest. You open up the spacing on your trees, 16 or 20 foot spacing. It allows sunlight to get in. It keeps the ground lush and green.
And guess what? That feeds the deer and the elk and the rabbits and all the other animals.
Hillary Franz, our land commissioner, you know, she's got plans of, you know, getting back to managing these forests. I'm not sure her plans are well received because there's a cost to it. But you have to weigh out the cost at the end of a season of how many millions or billions of dollars you spent fighting wildfire, where you could have front-loaded it by millions of dollars.
Manage it ahead of time.
Manage it ahead of time, put people to work and actually manage the forest. And then, you know, you have an environment that's inviting. You can establish trails. You can allow folks to go hiking and access. You're also ensuring we have access to waterways and not closing off our access to water as well.
Exactly.
It's tenfold, and if it's managed right, it gives us a lot of options. Because again, with urban sprawl and development, if our federal lands are turning over to state lands that are being sold to private, and then eventually it's developed,
then it can't be used for public.
Absolutely.
And you know, you can't tell me that you can't have land that you can manage properly with a renewable resource, keep our water clean, and take care of our environment, and not have the money to take care of it and manage it properly, because the timber companies in the state have millions and millions of acres that they do exactly that on that land.
Yeah.
So the state can do it. It just takes someone that has it as a priority.
Yep. Anything you want to cover in the realm of fishing, hunting, outdoors, recreation, access, water, land, commission, predation relative to pinnipeds, bird?
Yeah, I covered that a little bit. We need to get rid of the overpopulated predators, and that's on land and in the water. You know, we have to manage it, just like we were talking about with our forest lands.
Right.
It has to be managed. The predators have to be managed, as well as the salmon need to be managed to feed the orcas and to feed our citizens, right?
Yep.
And to provide recreation for our citizens.
Yep.
I want families to be able to get on the water, jump in a boat or go to a lake and enjoy the day fishing, you know, like I did all the time when I was little with my dad and my grandpa.
Yeah.
I had one grandpa that was commercial fisherman in the San Juan Islands, and I had my other grandpa who lived in Port Townsend. He was a sport fisherman, retired logger.
Right.
And I spent I don't know how many days and hours or years on the water with both of them.
Right.
And I want our fisheries to get back. I want our hunting to get back like it used to be. And I want families to be able to go out and experience the same thing that I did when I was young. You know,
you have a lot of people on board here this evening that are pretty much on board with everything you're saying in the realm of forestry management, predation issues, and getting a handle on them.
Dwayne, to me, you know, it's just common sense stuff, you know, from a blue collar point of view. You know, I don't have Ivy League degrees hanging on my wall, you know.
That makes two of us.
It's just
common sense
from a working man's point of view, you know.
You can't, we just can't continue to move forward and ignore a lot of these issues, which I feel like is happening with our current leaders in this state. Is, you know, and Seattle's a prime example. Let them just have that area, and we'll just not pay attention. It's peaceful. It'll just go away.
Yeah,
Well,
it doesn't work like that.
No, kids lost their lives because of lack of leadership in this state.
People are losing their businesses
because of lack of leadership in this state. And if we think our fisheries and our hunting and our public lands, and we can tout the Green Deal, I have yet to see it. Our you know, I've already mentioned it, our freeways are strewn with garbage.
Not to mention potholes.
Not to mention potholes. Everywhere you look, the homeless encampments along the rivers are adding a tremendous amount of waste into our waterways, which eventually all find their way out to Puget Sound. You cannot talk about clean water and be serious about our environment here in Washington State if you are turning a blind eye to the overabundance of the homeless issue, the garbage that builds up, the human waste, defecation that happens along the river shore banks.
Not to mention the dirty needles.
It all is included. So I don't want to hear this Green Deal and the way things are going, and we're all about, you know, let's get rid of fossil fuels. That's going to clean up our state. No, there's a lot more issues on the ground right in front of us day in and day out that are affecting. It may not affect you, you know, it may not affect you in your ability to get clean tap water right now, but it's affecting our ability to have clean waterways for our fish and animals to survive. And when we're talking about conservation and cleaning this state up and doing things, all of that is included, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to talk about saving the world, right? We're going to save the world, but we need to start right in our own backyard. Right. We need to concentrate right here in our state,
Washington State,
our communities.
Yep.
And yeah, I've got all of those issues that you just touched on. I know this is fishing and hunting.
Yeah.
I have all of those issues on my on my website, culpforgovernor.com.
Yeah.
But not only the issues, you know, anybody can put up the issues. Everybody knows what they are.
You have the
But I've got the solutions listed there as well, from my point of view, and it's a common sense point of view. You know, it can be done. It just takes someone in office that understands the servant role of government, not being a master over the citizens, because Article 1, Section 1, I think I already went over that, right? Yeah, the power is inherent in the people, and government's there to protect our rights.
Absolutely.
And we need to get back to that rule of law.
All those topics that we would not have enough time to cover. We did tremendously the first time you were here.
We could sit here all night and talk about all the things that are screwed up in this state.
Like I said, we tried to reel this down and keep it, and that wasn't a pun, by the way, but we tried to dial it in and focus mostly on hunting and fishing, which I think we've accomplished this evening. For all those other topics, all those frustrations, you know, you've had enough, you want answers to all these issues that plague Washington State and have for a number of years, and now it's at an all-time high with what we've seen unfold here in the last month and during this COVID crisis. That information can be found at culpforgovernor.com. And let's, before we get out of here, tell everybody, if you can think of it, some of your events coming up in the next couple days, where they need to go for information, where they need to go to support you in your efforts to land the governor's seat. We got to get through the primary first on August 4th.
Right. Yeah, the primary is August 4th. Ballots will be coming out in a couple weeks. Right now, I'm the leading candidate on the Republican side. We have far more individual donors than any other Republican, and I'm not talking a few hundred, I'm talking by the thousands.
Where do you land when, you know, people pull up these polls? You know, King 5, for example, is really good at putting out polls. And they look at that poll, and it's from who knows from how long ago. It shows me Culp's at 3%. I'm like, this is garbage. This is so fabricated, it's ridiculous.
Well, those are old-fashioned polls where you call somebody up and you ask them a series of questions. They can be skewed any way you want it to be, depending on how you're asking and whether the person is being truthful to you.
Sure.
Right? We saw the polls during the 2016 election.
Yeah.
Totally wrong.
Right.
They missed it all, but they come right back around the next election, right? So we look at several things. I'm getting far more individual donors than any other candidate on the Republican side by thousands.
Right.
We're raising more money than anybody on the Republican side, and we have for 3 months straight.
Right.
And we do some internal polling, and we're leaving everybody behind. I'm the only candidate that is going out and having meet and greets and rallies that has 600 to 800 people coming to them.
Right.
Father's Day breakfast. I had down south at a restaurant. It was sold out at 7:30 in the morning on Father's Day, and then had a rally right after that. But I'm traveling all over the state, and we're getting hundreds and hundreds of people that are coming to my rallies, hearing me speak. You know, we've got shirts and signs, and there's food vendors and live music we have at the rallies. But people can go to my website at culpforgovernor.com, and they can donate there. They can click on the events tab and see where I'm going to be at. We're going to be all over the state, and we've got some events coming up starting tomorrow night.
And you have your Wednesday live social media. Every Wednesday live. You can ask Loren Culp questions that concern you, and you're very good at answering. You take it to heart to give persons the answers that they truly want to hear. And
after my rallies,
please stop apologize for not being a politician. After that's the beauty of this thing, is that you are not a polished politician, as in some of the candidates you're up against, right?
Right.
So.
I've never done this before. I'm running because the citizens started asking me to. But I spend the time after I speak at my rallies. I stand right there and I talk to every single person in line until there's no one left to talk to me. So anybody that's got any questions, wants to come out and meet me in person, look at the events page on culpforgovernor.com and come on out and see me.
I honestly don't believe any of your other candidates on the Republican ticket have even ventured into answering questions relative to fishing and hunting in our state of Washington. There's a lot of issues, which it would be very easy for a candidate to focus on all those hot button issues and all the things that are in the news media day in and day out. Fishing and hunting in Washington State isn't in the news day in and day out.
I cover all of those other subjects.
But my point is, so do they. But fishing and hunting is important enough to you as the governor of this state that you will take time, invest time, answer questions. You approach it from passion, not just giving a political answer, and you're finding solutions that you have, assured folks that you will stick to. And
absolutely.
That's what makes you special. So, man, we filled up the deal here.
Good.
No Lingcod video tonight. We're going to save that. What? Keep? I can't read that from here.
Type videos. There's lots of viewers.
Oh, well, people are going to probably sign off because it's a 24-minute deal. So we can save it for later, or I can post that up on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel when it comes to the fishing. I apologize for running long, but it's not every day we get a governor candidate in our studio to ask these pointed questions and get to the brass tacks on this.
I'd love to come back after I get sworn in January and do another show.
Are you kidding?
As long as you have salmon dip.
That's a date. Perfect. Well, we're going to keep tabs on you. Best of luck to you, my friend, as we roll into August 4th. Everybody get out and vote. Do not believe the false narrative that your vote doesn't matter. If all the registered voters will get out and vote for who you truly want to be governor of our state in this next coming year, you need to get out and let your voice be heard. Fill out your ballot if it comes in your mail and mail that sucker in. Don't sit around on your hands and let this pass you by. It's your one opportunity.
And don't believe the lie. There are more conservatives in this state than there are liberals. So get out and vote. Make sure everybody you know is registered.
That's the key. All right. Appreciate you. God bless.
You bet. Thank you,
Very glad you're here. That's going to do it for us this week. We will stay in contact with Loren as he takes this on, especially over the next month as we gear up towards that primary. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you can hit us up here on our Facebook page and or go to Culp for Governor Facebook page. Have a great week. We'll see you next Thursday.